The elevator lurched to a stop between the 47th and 48th floors, and Marcus Chen's phone, displaying his daughter's school number, lost signal at the exact moment he was about to answer. The lights flickered once, twice, then settled into an eerie hum that filled the suddenly too small space. Across from him stood a woman in a charcoal Armani suit, her perfectly styled blonde hair barely moving as she glanced up from her tablet with the kind of irritation that suggested she'd never missed an important meeting in her life. Marcus pressed the emergency call button. Nothing. He pressed it again, harder this time, his contractor's hands, still dusted with drywall from this morning's job, leaving a faint smudge on the polished brass. The woman sighed, the sound cutting through the silence like a judgment. "The system will reset in a moment," she said, her voice carrying the practiced calm of someone who'd never had to wonder if their child's school was calling about an injury, an illness, or worse. "These new smart elevators are designed to self-diagnose and—" "My daughter's school was calling," Marcus interrupted, holding up his now useless phone. "I need to get out of here. Now." The woman's blue eyes finally left her tablet, really looking at him for the first time. She took in his worn jeans, his faded flannel shirt with Chen Construction embroidered on the pocket, the paint stain on his work boot. Her expression shifted. Not quite sympathy, but something close to recognition that they inhabited very different worlds, even though they were currently trapped in the same 6-by-8-foot box. "I'm sure it's fine," she offered, though her tone suggested she had no real basis for that assumption. Marcus turned away, staring at his reflection in the elevator's mirrored wall. At 34, he looked older, the kind of tired that comes from 3 years of single parenting a 7-year-old with type 1 diabetes while running a one-man contracting business. Every missed call from Riverside Elementary sent his mind spiraling through worst-case scenarios. Emma's blood sugar dropping during recess, her feeling dizzy in class, her small body going into crisis while he was unreachable. The woman, whoever she was, returned to her tablet, her manicured fingers flying across the screen with the urgency of someone solving problems that probably involved millions of dollars. Marcus wondered if she'd ever had to choose between paying for insulin or paying rent. If she'd ever sat in a hospital room at 3 a.m, watching her child sleep, counting every breath. What neither of them knew yet was that this wasn't just a mechanical failure. The elevator they were trapped in was part of something much larger, an interconnected network of smart systems that controlled every aspect of the 60-story Winston Tower, the crown jewel of Apex Corporation's $3 billion vision for the future of urban living. And in approximately 7 minutes, that entire system was going to fail in ways that would put hundreds of lives at risk. But first, they'd have to survive each other. Stay with me. What happens next changes everything about how we build the places where we live, work, and trust our family's safety. The woman glanced up again, this time with something almost like concern. "I'm Victoria Sterling," she said quietly. "And if it helps, I'm the CEO of the company that built this building." Marcus stared at her. "You're the CEO?" "Yes." Victoria straightened her shoulders, a reflex that seemed automatic, the armor of someone who'd spent years in boardrooms where any sign of weakness got weaponized. "Of Apex Corporation?" "That's correct." He let out a laugh, sharp and humorless, the sound echoing off the elevator's sleek walls. "So you're the one who designed these self-diagnosing smart elevators that just trapped us 47 floors up while my kid might be in trouble." Victoria's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping near her temple. "Our systems are state-of-the-art. This building has redundancy protocols that—" "Redundancy protocols." Marcus shook his head, pressing the emergency button again with his thumb, harder this time, as if force could somehow make it work. That's great. That's really great. You know what I have? I have a 7-year-old with type 1 diabetes and a school that only calls when something's wrong." For a moment, something flickered across Victoria's face. Not quite sympathy, but a crack in that CEO composure. Her fingers had stopped moving on the tablet. "Type 1, she repeated softly. "Yeah." Marcus turned back to face her fully, and he saw her swallow. Just once, barely noticeable. "So, while you're thinking about your bottom line and your fancy AI systems, I'm thinking about whether my daughter remembered to test her blood sugar before lunch. Whether she's sitting in the nurse's office right now, scared, wondering why her dad won't pick up the phone." Victoria's knuckles had gone white around the edges of her tablet. She opened her mouth, closed it, then said, "My son is 8. The words hung in the air between them. "Is," Marcus said carefully. "Yes, is." Victoria's voice had lost its corporate polish. "He's at Riverside Elementary too, 3rd grade, Mrs. Patterson's class." Marcus felt the air shift in the confined space. "Emma's in 2nd grade, Mrs. Chen, no relation." They stood there, 2 parents trapped in a metal box, 47 floors above the ground, the weight of that shared fear suddenly making the elevator feel even smaller. Victoria's perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide the darkness under her eyes, the kind that comes from nights spent worrying, from constantly doing the mental math of pickup times and emergency contacts, and the 1,000 ways a day can go wrong when you're responsible for keeping a small human alive. "The school has my direct line," Victoria said quietly. "They'll call the backup numbers. Your daughter will be fine." But her hand was trembling slightly as she touched the screen of her tablet, and Marcus noticed something else. She'd tried to refresh her phone signal 3 times in the last 30 seconds. The powerful CEO of a $3 billion corporation was just as trapped, just as helpless, just as terrified of a missed call as he was. "How long have you been doing this alone?" Marcus asked, his voice gentler now. Victoria's eyes met his, and for just a second, the mask dropped completely. 2 years, divorce. You? 3, widowed. The word landed heavy. Victoria's expression shifted again. That particular look people get when they realize someone else's pain runs deeper than their own. "I'm sorry," she said, and it sounded genuine. Before Marcus could respond, the lights flickered again. Then the tablet in Victoria's hands went dark. Not sleep mode. Completely dark. She tapped it once, twice, her movements becoming urgent. "That's not supposed to happen," she whispered. "This has an independent power source. It shouldn't." The emergency lighting kicked on, bathing them both in an amber glow, and somewhere far below them, in the building's central control room, every screen was beginning to flash the same message: system failure. Cascade protocol initiated. The temperature in the elevator began to rise. Marcus felt it first. A subtle shift from the artificial chill of corporate air conditioning to something warmer, then uncomfortably warm. He watched a bead of sweat form on Victoria's hairline, tracking down past her ear. "The climate control is linked to the main grid," she said, her voice tight. She was tapping frantically at her tablet, but the screen remained black. "If the backup power isn't routing correctly," a metallic groan cut through her words. The elevator shifted, dropping what felt like an inch before catching itself. Marcus's stomach lurched. He instinctively reached out, his hand gripping the railing, while Victoria stumbled forward, catching herself against the wall. "Jesus," Marcus breathed. "We're fine. The cables are rated for—" Victoria stopped mid-sentence, her eyes widening as she looked up at the ceiling panels. "Do you hear that?" Marcus tilted his head, listening. There it was. A faint humming sound, irregular, coming from somewhere above them. not the normal mechanical sounds of an elevator at rest. This was different. Wrong. What is that? The magnetic brake system. Victoria's face had gone pale under the emergency lighting. It's cycling. It shouldn't be cycling. We're not moving. What does that mean? She didn't answer right away, and that silence told Marcus everything he needed to know. He'd been in enough old buildings, worked on enough sketchy electrical systems to recognize when an expert was scared of their own creation. Victoria, what does that mean? It means the system is confused. She moved toward the control panel, her CEO composure cracking further with each word. The smart building operates on integrated AI protocols. Everything talks to everything else. Elevators, HVAC, security, fire suppression. If there's a cascade failure, if one system starts giving bad data to another system. Marcus stepped closer to the panel beside her. Years of reading electrical schematics and building codes kicked in. Show me what you're looking at. You wouldn't understand I've been retrofitting commercial buildings for 10 years. I know what a failed circuit looks like, and I know what happens when someone trusts computers more than physics. His voice was firm, but not unkind. Show me. Victoria hesitated, then angled her dark tablet toward the emergency light. On the black screen, he could just make out a faint reflection of the control panel behind them. There, she said, pointing. That access port. If we can manually override the system, we might be able to trigger the emergency descent protocol. Might? I've never had to do this manually. It's supposed to be automatic. Marcus pulled a multi-tool from his pocket, the kind that had gotten him through 1,000 jobs, the kind his wife used to tease him about carrying everywhere. Supposed to be automatic. Famous last words. He worked the panel open, revealing a nest of fiber optic cables and circuitry that looked nothing like the simple elevator systems he'd worked on before. Everything was miniaturized, integrated, sealed, built by people who never imagined someone would need to fix it by hand. Blue wire or red wire, he muttered. This isn't a movie, Mr. Chen. Those are data conduits, not... Victoria's words died as the lights flickered again. Longer this time. When they came back, they were dimmer. Battery backup, she whispered. We're on battery backup. That means the main power to this elevator shaft is completely gone. The temperature climbed another degree. Marcus could feel his shirt sticking to his back now. In a space this small, with no ventilation, they had maybe an hour before heat exhaustion became a real problem. Less? If either of them panicked. How many other elevators in this building? He asked, keeping his voice steady. 16. How many people could be trapped right now? Victoria closed her eyes. If this is a full cascade, dozens, maybe more. And here's what you need to understand. This wasn't just about 2 people stuck in an elevator anymore. This was about a building that thought it was smarter than the people inside it. And what happens when $3 billion of innovation forgets that technology fails? But humans find a way. Then we better work fast, Marcus said, already tracing the circuit pathways with his eyes. Talk me through your system. Victoria knelt beside him, her expensive suit gathering dust from the elevator floor, something the CEO from 20 minutes ago would never have allowed. She guided his hand to a specific junction point, her fingers precise despite the tremor Marcus noticed hadn't gone away. This conduit feeds data from the shaft sensors, she explained. If we can bypass the error loop... Why'd you build it this way? Marcus interrupted, not looking up from his work. All this integration, all these systems talking to each other, you had to know it created a single point of failure. Silence. Then, because I wanted to save lives. Marcus's hands stopped moving. He glanced at her. Victoria sat back on her heels. Her perfectly styled hair now slightly disheveled, mascara smudged at one corner where she'd rubbed her eye. My son, Jacob. He has severe asthma. 3 years ago, we were living in Seattle. There was a fire in our building. 4th floor, middle of the night. Her voice had gone quiet, distant. The alarm system failed. The fire doors didn't close automatically. The emergency lighting didn't work on our floor. Victoria, we got out because a neighbor smelled smoke and started pounding on doors. Just luck. Random chance. She looked at Marcus now, and her eyes were bright with unshed tears. I was the VP of innovation at a tech firm. I built systems for a living, and I couldn't protect my own child because someone somewhere cut corners on a fire safety system that should have been foolproof. Marcus understood now. So, you built this. So I built this, she echoed. A building where everything monitors everything else, where AI predicts failures before they happen, where no child has to wake up choking on smoke because someone forgot to replace a battery or ignored a maintenance report. She laughed, bitter. Except here we are, trapped. And for all I know, this cascade failure is affecting the fire suppression systems, the emergency exits, Hey! Marcus set down his multi-tool and turned to face her fully. You built something that was supposed to protect people. That's not nothing. That matters. Does it? If it fails anyway? My wife, Marcus said slowly, was a structural engineer. She spent months working on a bridge project upstate, obsessing over every calculation, every stress test. She used to say that the difference between a good engineer and a great one wasn't about building something that never failed. It was about building something that failed safely. Victoria wiped at her eye, leaving another smudge. What happened to her? Cancer. Pancreatic. 11 months from diagnosis to... He swallowed. Emma was 4. Didn't understand why Mommy kept getting sicker. I had to explain death to a 4-year-old who still believed in Santa Claus. God, Marcus. The last thing Sarah made me promise, the very last conversation we had when she was still lucid, was that I'd teach Emma to build things, to make things better. Not perfect. Just better. He picked up the multi-tool again, turning it over in his hands. You know what I see when I look at this building? I see someone who's trying, someone who lost sleep over getting it right. That's more than most people do. Victoria's professional mask had completely dissolved now. She looked younger, more vulnerable. Just a mother who'd been terrified once and had spent millions trying to make sure no one else felt that fear. My ex-husband said I was obsessed, she said quietly, that I cared more about the company than our family. That's why he left. Took Jacob across the country to Boston, got primary custody. I see my son 6 weeks a year now. That's why you're here, Marcus realized, in Winston Tower on a Thursday afternoon. You're always here. If I'm here, I'm building something that matters. If I'm not... She trailed off. Then I'm just someone who failed at marriage and barely sees her kid. Marcus reached out, surprising himself, and squeezed her shoulder once. You're also someone who's going to help me get us out of this elevator, and then we're both going to get to our kids. Deal? Victoria met his eyes, and slowly she nodded. Deal. The lights flickered again, and this time they heard something new. A distant alarm, echoing up through the shaft from somewhere far below. That's the fire alarm, Victoria whispered. On the lower floors. Marcus worked faster now, his fingers tracing wire pathways while Victoria held the emergency light closer. The fire alarm continued its distant wail, a reminder that whatever was happening in this elevator was just one symptom of something much larger going wrong. There, Marcus said, pointing to a small display screen embedded in the panel. It was still lit. Barely. That's not dead yet. Can you access anything through that? Victoria leaned in, her eyes scanning the dim readout. It's showing diagnostic codes, error logs. She squinted, then her face went slack. Oh no, oh God, no. What? These timestamps. Her finger traced the screen, hand shaking harder now. The system's been throwing error codes for 3 weeks. Critical warnings, temperature regulation failures, sensor conflicts, power distribution anomalies. She looked at Marcus, her face ashen in the amber light. Someone silenced the alerts. Marcus felt ice in his stomach despite the rising heat. What do you mean, silenced? Victoria was scrolling frantically now through screens of data, her CEO composure replaced by something close to panic. The AI is designed to flag system conflicts and route them to the engineering team, but these warnings, they were acknowledged and dismissed, manually overridden. She stopped, her breath catching. With my executive access code. You did this? No, I didn't. I would never. Victoria's mind was clearly racing. But someone with access to my credentials did. Someone on my team saw these warnings and buried them. Why would anyone do that? Victoria closed her eyes. And Marcus watched her face transform as realization hit. The grand opening. Winston Towers' official launch is in 6 days. Governor's coming. Press coverage. We have 50 corporate tenants signed, another 100 on waiting lists. Apex's stock price is tied to this building's success. She opened her eyes, and they were filled with horror. We're $3 billion invested. If we delayed the opening for system repairs. Someone chose profit over safety, Marcus finished, his voice hard. The VP of Operations, David Reese. Victoria was talking faster now, pieces clicking together. He's been pushing back on every delay, every maintenance request. Last month I asked for an additional safety audit, and he said it would send the wrong message to investors. She looked at Marcus. I should have insisted. I should have. The elevator dropped again, more than an inch this time. A full foot, maybe 2, before the emergency brakes screamed and caught. Both of them slammed against the wall. Marcus's multi-tool clattered to the floor. Marcus worked faster now, his fingers tracing wire pathways while Victoria held the emergency light closer. The fire alarm continued its distant wail, a reminder that whatever was happening in this elevator was just one symptom of something much larger going wrong. There, Marcus said, pointing to a small display screen embedded in the panel. It was still lit. Barely. That's not dead yet. Can you access anything through that? Victoria leaned in, her eyes scanning the dim readout. It's showing diagnostic codes, error logs. She squinted, then her face went slack. Oh no, oh God, no. What? These timestamps. Her finger traced the screen, hand shaking harder now. The system's been throwing error codes for 3 weeks. Critical warnings, temperature regulation failures, sensor conflicts, power distribution anomalies. She looked at Marcus, her face ashen in the amber light. Someone silenced the alerts. Marcus felt ice in his stomach despite the rising heat. What do you mean, silenced? Victoria was scrolling frantically now through screens of data, her CEO composure replaced by something close to panic. The AI is designed to flag system conflicts and route them to the engineering team, but these warnings, they were acknowledged and dismissed, manually overridden. She stopped, her breath catching. With my executive access code. You did this? No, I didn't. I would never. Victoria's mind was clearly racing. But someone with access to my credentials did. Someone on my team saw these warnings and buried them. Why would anyone do that? Victoria closed her eyes. And Marcus watched her face transform as realization hit. The grand opening. Winston Towers' official launch is in 6 days. Governor's coming. Press coverage. We have 50 corporate tenants signed, another 100 on waiting lists. Apex's stock price is tied to this building's success. She opened her eyes, and they were filled with horror. We're $3 billion invested. If we delayed the opening for system repairs. Someone chose profit over safety, Marcus finished, his voice hard. The VP of Operations, David Reese. Victoria was talking faster now, pieces clicking together. He's been pushing back on every delay, every maintenance request. Last month I asked for an additional safety audit, and he said it would send the wrong message to investors. She looked at Marcus. I should have insisted. I should have. The elevator dropped again, more than an inch this time. A full foot, maybe 2, before the emergency brakes screamed and caught. Both of them slammed against the wall. Marcus's multi-tool clattered to the floor. Marcus jammed the multi-tool into the door seam, leveraging it with everything he had. The manual release mechanism, designed for firefighters, not civilians, fought back against every ounce of force he applied. Sweat poured down his face. Beside him, Victoria pulled on the door with both hands, her manicured nails breaking against the metal. Come on, Marcus grunted. Come on. The door gave way 6 inches, then 12. Just enough. Go, Marcus said, but Victoria was already squeezing through the gap into the darkened shaft. Emergency lighting cast everything in hellish red. They were positioned between floors, the 47th floor lobby visible 4 feet above them. Marcus pulled himself through after her, muscles screaming, and together they hauled themselves up onto solid ground. The moment his feet hit the carpet, Victoria was running, not toward the stairwell, but toward the executive suite at the end of the hall. Where are you going? Marcus called after her. To finish this, she shouted back. The executive floor was chaos. Alarms blaring, emergency lights strobing, people streaming toward the stairwells, some panicked, others trying to maintain corporate composure even as the building itself betrayed them. Victoria burst through the glass doors of the main conference room without knocking. 8 people sat around a massive table, laptops open, faces illuminated by screens showing system failures cascading across every monitor. At the head of the table sat a silver-haired man in his 50s, barking orders into a phone. David Reese. He looked up as Victoria entered, Marcus right behind her. Victoria, thank God. We're managing the situation. But we need you to... You buried the reports, Victoria said, her voice cutting through the room like a blade. For 3 weeks, you buried critical system failure warnings. The room went silent. Every face turned toward them. Reese set down his phone carefully. Victoria, this isn't the time for using my access codes, she continued, striding toward the table. Marcus hung back near the door, watching. You saw warnings that the integrated AI system was throwing conflicts, that the safety protocols were compromised, and you dismissed them because the grand opening was 6 days away. We have protocols for... Protocols? Victoria's voice rose, raw emotion breaking through. There are people trapped in 16 elevators right now, David. The fire suppression system on floors 12 through 18 just failed. The emergency lighting in the north stairwell is out. And you're talking about protocols? A woman to Reese's left, the chief financial officer, Marcus guessed from her expensive suit, spoke up. Victoria, we understand you're upset, but accusing... I have the logs, Victoria said, pulling a thumb drive from her pocket. Marcus realized she must have downloaded them from the elevator panel. Time-stamped, traceable, every warning that was ignored, every override that used my credentials without my authorization. 3 weeks of evidence that this company chose deadlines over safety. Reese stood slowly. You're making a mistake. If you release that data, Apex is finished. The stock will crater. We'll default on $4 billion in construction loans. 12,000 employees will lose their jobs. Is that what you want? To destroy everything we've built? Everything we've built is broken, Victoria shot back. It's killing people right now. There's a fire on the 12th floor because the suppression system failed. In 7 minutes, when the backup generators give out, every elevator in this building goes into emergency descent. Do you understand what that means? Dozens of people dropping at terminal velocity, held up by brakes that are already overheating. The emergency brakes will hold, Reese insisted, but his voice wavered. Will they? Victoria moved around the table, standing directly across from him now. Because I was just trapped in elevator 7 with this man. She gestured to Marcus. And our brakes were failing. We manually pried the doors open because your system, the one you certified as safe, was about to kill us. Marcus stepped forward then. His work clothes and paint-stained boots a stark contrast to the suits around the table. I'm nobody important, he said quietly. I'm a contractor, a single dad. But I know buildings, and I know what happens when people trust technology more than physics. My 7-year-old daughter goes to the same school as Mrs. Sterling's son. Right now, I don't know if she's okay because I was trapped in your state-of-the-art elevator for 45 minutes. He looked at each person around the table. How many of you have kids? Grandkids? How many of them would you put in one of these elevators right now, knowing what you know? Silence. The CFO looked down at her hands. A young man in thick glasses, IT probably, pushed his laptop away slightly, as if distancing himself. Reese's jaw tightened. This is extortion. This is truth, Victoria said. And here's what's going to happen. Right now you're going to authorize a full building evacuation. Every person out, emergency services in. Then you're going to call the SEC, and you're going to self-report the safety violations before the press gets hold of this. That's corporate suicide. That's taking responsibility. Victoria placed the thumb drive on the table. And then you're going to resign. You're going to take full accountability for overriding safety protocols. Because I'm not going down for your decisions, David. Neither is this company. And neither are the 15,000 people who were going to live in buildings designed with these same flaws. Reese stared at her, calculating. Marcus could see the gears turning. Legal exposure, financial liability, personal consequences. If I do this, Reese said slowly, I lose everything. If you don't, Victoria replied, people die, and you lose everything anyway. Plus you go to prison for criminal negligence. The fire alarm grew louder. Someone's phone buzzed with an emergency alert. The building itself was falling apart around them, a $3 billion monument to the gap between innovation and safety. Reese looked around the table, seeing only averted eyes. No allies left. He reached for the phone. Get me building security, he said, his voice hollow. Initiate full evacuation protocol, all residents, all floors. Victoria's shoulders sagged slightly, relief mixed with exhaustion. But she wasn't done. She turned to the rest of the table. And the rest of you, she said, her voice steady now, you're going to help me rebuild this right. Not fast, not cheap. Right. Because that's what we should have done from the beginning. Marcus caught her eye across the room and nodded once. She nodded back. Outside, sirens began to wail. 6 months later, Marcus stood in the gutted lobby of Winston Tower, hard hat on, watching crews install new elevator systems, analog backups integrated with smart technology, designed by engineers who'd learned that innovation without safety wasn't innovation at all. Victoria walked the site daily now, no longer just a CEO behind a desk, but someone who understood that buildings were made for people, not profit margins. She'd survived the board vote, barely, by promising complete transparency and a ground-up redesign. The building would open a year late. Cost overruns exceeded $200 million. But every elevator had manual overrides now. Every system had independent backups. And every warning would be heard. David Reese had resigned, facing federal charges. 3 other executives followed. The other 4 Apex buildings? Construction halted pending safety reviews. 15,000 lives protected by 2 parents who'd refused to stay silent in a broken elevator. Emma Chen pressed the elevator button in the newly reopened Winston Tower, her insulin pump visible on her hip, her father's hand in hers. Beside them, Jacob Sterling clutched his inhaler, standing next to his mother who visited from Boston more often now. Every other weekend, sometimes more. The doors opened. Emma looked up at Marcus. Is it safe, Dad? Marcus glanced at Victoria, who knelt down to both children's eye level. It's safe, she said softly, because your dads and your mom made sure of it. The elevator rose smoothly, quietly, 47 floors without a single tremor. When the doors opened, Emma pointed to a bronze plaque mounted on the wall. Winston Tower, rebuilt 2025. In honor of those who spoke truth when silence was easier. Sometimes the buildings we construct aren't just steel and glass. They're promises we make about the kind of world we want to leave behind. Marcus squeezed his daughter's hand. Victoria smiled, and the elevator doors closed gently behind them, carrying them safely home.